Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land. It's time once again for me to bring you the news here on Level-Headed News on 18th day of October 2016. The first item that I have for you is off of Politico.com. And we're waiting for the computer to catch up to me here. Gee, I've got so much news coming at you that it's bogging the computer down tonight. Okay, the first one we have here is the Obama holder to lead post-Trump redistricting campaign. Former Attorney General heads up a new Democratic effort to challenge the GOP's supremacy in state legislatures and the U.S. House. As Democrats aim to capitalize on this year's Republican turmoil and start building back their own, former Attorney General Eric Holder will chair a new umbrella group focused on redistricting reform, with the aim of taking on the gerrymandering that's left the party behind in state houses and make winning a House majority far more difficult. The new group, called Democratic Redistricting Committee, was developed in close consultation with the White House. President Barack Obama himself has now identified the group, which will coordinate campaign strategy, direct funding, organize ballot initiatives, and put together legal challenges to state redistricting maps as the main focus of his political activity once he leaves office. Though initial plans to be active in this year's elections fell short, the group has been incorporated as a 527 with Democratic Governors Association Elizabeth Pearson as its president and House Majority PAC or PAC Executive Director Ali Lapp as its vice president. They have been pitching donors and aiming to put together its first phase action plan for December, moving first in the Virginia and New Jersey state elections next year, and with an eye toward coordination across gubernatorial, state legislative, and House races going into the 2018 midterms. American voters deserve fair maps that represent our diverse communities, and we need to coordinate strategy to make that happen, Holder said. And a new effort will ensure Democrats have a seat at the table to create fairer maps after 2020. Obama strongly endorsed Holder's selection and is planning more involvement in state races this year. But it's in his post-presidency that redistricting will be a priority for his fundraising and campaigning. Where he will be most politically engaged will be at state level or state legislative level, with an eye on redistricting after 2020, said White House political director David Simas, who's been briefing Obama on the group's progress since it started coming together at the beginning of the summer. The group's incorporation follows a pitch made to major donors in Philadelphia during the Democratic convention in July, led by Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe and Connecticut Governor Daniel Mallory, along with House Majority Leader Nancy Pelosi, Democrat of California, and Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee Chair Republican Ben Ray Lujan of New Mexico. The group hasn't filed any financial reports yet and isn't releasing figures for money raised, but operatives say several organizations have donated initial funds in its early stages of fundraising. The piece that was missing in this group, where each of us has a role and each of us needs to focus on our piece of it, but there needs to be the overreaching organization to make sure there are no holes, Pearson said. Our NDRC aims to tackle central problems for Democrats. They complain about the need for redistricting reform all the time and have dozens of aligned interest groups pushing their own efforts, but none has gone far, and that's left the party on the ropes every cycle. Lower Democratic turnout in midterm years has enabled Republicans to win governor's races and state house races that consolidate power in state capitals and Washington by being the ones who draw the maps that everyone needs to run on. They argue that Democrats have been losing races in large part because they've let Republicans tilt the field. The result, the ranks of up-and-coming Democrats have been thinned, and there are fewer and more difficult races for the ones who are left to run on. Donald Trump is an acute symptom of the party in decline. The Republican leadership can't help but be aware that their majorities in the U.S. House and in the many state houses are inflated at best, wholly artificial at worst, said Carolyn Fiedler, communications director for the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, the Washington group that coordinates among state house races and is also partner in the NDRC. A coordinated effort among Democrats to prevent another round of GOP gerrymandering is Republicans' worst nightmare for the long-term health of their party, is her quote. One number that's on their mind: Republicans got 52% of the votes in 2014, but won 57% of the seats. Asked about that argument and the Democrats' larger redistricting effort, Katie Martin, communications director for the National Republican Congressional Committee, said Sunday, "I don't think there's a reason for us to comment on this." The Republican Governors Association did not return an email requesting comment. But Bill McCollum, the former Florida Attorney General, who's the chair of the Republican State Leadership Committee, said he feels confident that the GOP will be able to keep its edge. Democrats have not focused on the kind of national effort to identifying strong candidates and target specific races at the state level, McCollum said, arguing that already it's too late for the redistricting cycle for that kind of move to have much impact. McCollum said he doesn't believe the Trump effect this year or beyond will trickle down to Republican state legislative candidates, and that the farm team they've been building since 2010 will hold and be central to the Republican building or rebuilding expected to begin November the 9th. The gubernatorial candidates who win in 2017 and 2018 are the ones who will be in office to approve the maps for the 2022 elections, put together by the state legislators elected along with them. The NDRC plans to hold regular meetings of Democratic groups and allies, building strategies on recruitment, ad spending, get out the vote, and other efforts to maximize resources and impact. House campaigns would then work with the state Senate in assembly campaigns, unions, progressive organizations, and others in high opportunity areas, hoping to push up their numbers as much as possible ahead of the 2020 census. How does try this again. How does the work that we've been going to be doing anyway in House races, how can that trickle down to state legislative races? Are there places where you get more bang for your buck? Says Lapp, whose super PAC boosts House Democrats in competitive races. The group is planning to hire staff starting by December, though it will still rely on groups like DGA and House Majority PAC for some of the legwork. We're developing a comprehensive unified plan that represents tactically the way we increase Democratic power in the next redistricting that's state specific, said Mark Schauer, a former Michigan congressman and failed 2014 candidate for governor who's serving as senior advisor to the group. By 2017, we'll speak with one voice under the auspices of the NDRC to big donors around the country, pointing them to the best ways to impact redistricting. So there you have that article. The next one I have is off of truepundit.com. And this one says Hillary Clinton promised Obama and Attorney General Lynch U.S. Supreme Court justice posts for life. That again, so it sinks in good. Hillary Clinton promised Obama and Attorney General Lynch U.S. Supreme Court justice posts for life. Under a Hillary Clinton regime, President Barack Obama, Associate Justice Anton Scalia, and Attorney General Loretta Lynch will replace soon-to-retire Associate Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court of the United States, according to White House and Justice Department insiders. And you thought you'd almost seen the last of President Obama? Think again. According to the White House sources, Obama has confided to key insiders that the reason he chose to reside in Washington, D.C. after his second term and not Hawaii as originally planned is because Clinton has promised him on the Supreme Court. Now it is starting to make sense why Obama never pushed back on Merrick Garland's nomination rebuke by the GOP-controlled Senate. Obama to the Supreme Court after the mysterious death of Justin Scalia in early 2016. The Senate never even considered the nomination. The bigger surprise here is Lynch, who by many accounts has posted an even worse public record trampling the Constitution than Obama since she arrived in Washington, D.C. Nonetheless, Lynch is more than just a strong rumor to replace Justice Ginsburg, according to Justice Department sources who spoke to True Pundit. Clinton has promised the job to Lynch, sources said, but the Attorney General is still considering the offer. Will Lynch decline? Doubtful, Justice Department sources said. Obama and Lynch on the Supreme Court for life. Talk about stacked court. The question now is, can either pass the Senate confirmation? Whoops, we forgot Republicans have no spine, so passing confirmation hearings would likely prove a breeze, regardless of Obama and Lynch's key and corrupt roles in keeping Clinton free from criminal charges in her blatant mishandling of government emails, classified and top secret intelligence, Foundation's pay-to-play scheme, and cover-up, which would likely ensnare the FBI and Justice Department as certain accomplices. Lynch was promised the Supreme Court post in June or July, sources said, which would put the job offer right at the exact time the FBI concluded not to refer Clinton's case to the Justice Department for criminal indictment. Coincidence? When can we expect to see FBI Director James Comey in Supreme Court robe? Of course, if Donald Trump wins the election in November, Clinton, Obama, Lynch, and Comey might be retained criminal defense attorney instead of presiding over them. Next article that I have for you is off of jihadwatch.org. All of these URLs, of course, are in the description of the video, so you can and do whatever research you want to do on them. This says, German Home Secretary on migrants. We have underestimated the role of religion. And life for Christian refugees among Muslim migrants is still unbearable. For instance, recently arrived refugee was confronted with these words written on the wall of his refugee shelter: "The time has come to cut off the heads of all non-believers." No one should be surprised if Muslim acts according to Quranic imperatives. When you meet the unbeliever, strike the necks, Quran 47:4. But apparently no one in Germany was or is prepared for that. Life for some Christians in German refugee shelters still unbearable, World Watch Monitor, October 17th of 2016. A group of German NGOs led by Open Doors Germany is calling on Angela Merkel's federal government and on state governments to end the integration experiment of mixing Christians and Muslim refugees in refugee centers, saying the solution for Christian and other religious minorities there is still unbearable. We have underestimated the roles of religion, said Germany's Home Secretary Thomas D. Maisonier at the Future Conference on Integration in September, looking back at recent events in his country. Contrary to widespread belief in Germany, he said, the importance of religion and faith has not decreased globally. In September of 2015, German Chancellor Angela Merkel declared that any Syrian who could reach Germany could claim asylum there, partly based on her offer on the biblical principles of welcoming the stranger and those in need. And the 1990 Dublin Convention, which said that refugees must claim asylum in the first EU country they reach. This, Merkel argued, was placing heavy burden on countries like Malta, Italy, and Greece. So she also soon urged other EU members to join a quota system, whereby they would be required to resettle their fair share of asylum seekers too. Merkel's gesture of humanity has resulted in an influx into Germany of perhaps 1 million people since her comment. In March of 2016, the head of Germany's migration office admitted that up to 400,000 had not applied for asylum. Hundreds of thousands have been living in temporary shelters, and the problem of freedom of religion or belief in countries like Iran or Afghanistan or Pakistan appear to have been transplanted to these crowded shelters. Such a thing to happen in Germany. Many of the people reaching Europe are refugees or asylum seekers. Some have fled to Germany from Islamic countries because of the persecution and discrimination they faced at home. Now, from those minority faiths, such as Christians or Yazidis, can often experience the same kind of pressure at these refugee shelters in Germany. For instance, a recently arrived refugee was confronted with these words written on the wall of the refugee shelter: "The time has come to cut off the heads of all." He described his horror: "I was shocked and I ran. This may happen, but never expected such a thing to happen in Germany. This has shattered my trust." The group's charities, Open Doors Germany, Action on Behalf of Christians and the Needy, the Central Council of the Oriental Christians in Germany, and the European Mission Society, has published a report, Lack of Protection for Religious Minorities in Germany, which summarizes the findings of a survey carried out amongst asylum seekers seeking to give the evidence behind refugees' accounts of intimidation. "I was shocked. In Iran, this may happen, but I never expected such a thing to happen in Germany. This has shattered my trust." So that is that article. The next one that we have here is off of regated.com. We'll give her a second to roll on up here. States voting machines linked to Soros Foundation. New findings have emerged showing that a Open Society Foundation chairman also sits on the board of Smartmatic. And the screen's jumping around a little bit. There we go. Our voting machine manufacturer, Mark Malak Brown, is chairman of the board of directors on Smartmatic. Smartmatic is a company that produces voting machines, vote counting machines, and software for elections around the world. Malak Brown is also vice chairman in George Soros's Open Society Foundations. George Soros is a powerful billionaire who operates mostly in the shadows behind puppet institutions like his Open Society Foundations. The Open Society Foundations are dedicated to the destruction of sovereign nations by creating internal strife and decay. Soros actively undermines democracies to achieve his own agenda. He's known in financial circles for breaking the Bank of England. John Voight recently said of Soros, "How many Americans are aware of George Soros, an evil man who turned hundreds of Jewish people over to the Nazis to be exterminated during World War II. He supports hate groups who are responsible for taking down our cities, and he is a close friend of Hillary Clinton and a major supporter of her campaign." Out on Smartmatic profile page in his Open Society Foundation's website, ask yourself, is this conflict of interest? We know George Soros has given $8 million to Hillary Clinton's campaign. We know billionaires give money to get more in return, and peddling influence is bread and butter for the Clintons. Clinton campaign manager Robbie Mook even wrote in email to Huma Abedin that he would invite Hillary to a Soros dinner only for political reasons. Is to make Soros happy. This is a campaign that joked about asking for $6 million in exchange for a simple thank you from Bill Clinton. If Americans have any shred of integrity left, if we hold our public officials to any sort of standard, this is blatant and obvious conflict of interest cannot be allowed to stand. Mark Malloch Brown and Smartmatic have direct ties to Soros Open Society Foundation. In the U.S., Smartmatic has deployed 57,000 voting and counting machines and given service and support to the electoral commissions of 307 counties and 16 states. Arizona, California, Colorado, District of Columbia, Florida, Illinois, Louisiana, Michigan, Missouri, New Jersey, Nevada, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Washington, and Wisconsin. If you live in any of these above states, it is imperative that you write your congressman or any other public representative who will listen, unless there's an outcry and vocal backlash. Known political meddler Soros will think he's gotten away with this. You can also contact Smartmatic and ask how they can assure the count will be fair. Smartmatic's Twitter, Smartmatic's Facebook. And those are links that you can click on that'll take you to their pages. Samara Saba's integrated communications director at SmartTech's Twitter, and there's a link that you can click on there to take you to that page. It's vital we don't lose hope during the last weeks before Election Day, because no matter how rigged this election appears, we can still sway things. Hillary Clinton and her band of corrupt, unethical thugs want us to lose our will to resist. Get out and vote and convince friends to come along on November the 8th and make the message loud and clear. We do not want someone as corrupt, unethical, and narcissistic as Hillary Clinton in the White House with their finger on the big red button and Soros' thumb on her. The next one that we have here is off of Latino, foxnews.com. For the page to roll up here on the screen. It says Ecuador ordered Assange's internet cut off to tilt election toward Clinton, experts say. The news that the Ecuadorian government purportedly cut WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange's internet access hours after the hacker group released another trove of damaging emails about U.S. presidential contender Hillary Clinton could spell a reversal in relations between Quito and Washington. Assange, who has been living in the Ecuadorian embassy in London since June of 2012 after being granted asylum there following a British court order to extradite him to Sweden to face questioning in a sexual molestation case, has been a major source of irritation for the U.S. The Obama administration accused WikiLeaks and Russia of attempting to interfere with the U.S. presidential election process by releasing emails from Clinton's campaign Chairman John Podesta, along with those from a range of other institutions and prominent individuals. While both WikiLeaks and Ecuadorian officials have only made on the cutting of Assange's internet access, there is speculation that President Rafael Correa is looking to repair the icy relationship between his country and the U.S., and he is hedging his bet that Clinton will win the race for the White House. It may, in part, have to do with Correa thinking that to assist the campaign of Donald Trump would be unconscionable. Eric Hirschberg, the director of American University's Center for Latin America and Latino Studies, told Fox News Latino in reference to the idea that WikiLeaks releases are helping the GOP nominee run for the White House. Correa, a leftist leader who has maintained friendly relations with the anti-U.S. governments in Venezuela and Bolivia, and whose term expires next year, recently voiced his support for Clinton's presidential run and says he knows her personally from her time as Secretary of State. For the good of the United States and the world, I would like Hillary to win, Correa told Russia Today last month. Correa's fondness for Clinton is in stark contrast to the policy his government has taken toward U.S. under Clinton's former boss, Barack Obama, and much of the animosity animosity, my tongue's getting tied, between Quinto and Washington stems from another WikiLeaks dump. In April of 2011, Ecuador expelled the U.S. ambassador to the country after a leaked diplomatic cable was shown accusing Korea of knowingly ignoring police corruption. In response, Ecuadorian ambassador Luis Gallegos was expelled from the United States. 2 years later, relations continued their southward turn when Korea's government unilaterally pulled out of a bilateral trade pact over claims that the U.S. used its blackmail in regards to the asylum request of former NSA staffer Edward Snowden. By cutting Assange's internet, Korea may or may not be looking to curry favor with a potential Clinton administration, but it does not appear that the moment they are looking to make any more moves against their embassy's infamous house guest. Making no mention of cutting Assange's internet connection, Ecuador's foreign minister, Guillaume Long, said in a statement in response to the speculation of the last few hours, reaffirming Assange's asylum status and saying that his protection by the Ecuadorian state will continue while the circumstances that led to the granting of asylum remain. Despite the assertion that Assange's asylum status is safe, there have been reports that he might be wearing out his welcome in the London embassy. The WikiLeaks founder has not kept a low profile while residing in the embassy suite number 3, Hans Crescent. He eats daily of delivery food, has hosted numerous high-profile guests, and occasionally uses the embassy balcony to address the media. Besides his high visibility, confidential Ecuadorian government documents revealed that Assange's evident anger and feelings of superiority could cause stress to those around him, especially the personnel who work in the embassy, mainly women, and also detailed a violent after-hours confrontation between him and an Ecuadorian security guard in September of 2012. I can't see how Assange's presence in the embassy has made the staff's life at the embassy any easier, Hershberg said. So there's that one, and I have another one on this. This is from thehill.com. We're waiting for the hamster to get this up. Okay, Ecuador confirms it cut off Assange's internet over Clinton emails. The Ecuadorian government confirmed Tuesday that it cut off WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange's internet connection because of his anti-secrecy platform publication of emails allegedly stolen from Hillary Clinton campaign manager John Podesta. Ecuador respects the principle of non-intervention in the internal affairs of other states. It does not interfere in external electoral process, nor does it favor any particular candidate, Ecuador said in a statement. Accordingly, Ecuador has exercised its sovereign right to temporarily restrict access to some of its private communication network embassy in the United Kingdom. The emails are believed to have been stolen by the Russian government, and their release has been widely seen as a deliberate attempt to meddle in the U.S. election, although some Republicans have lauded their publication. Nominee Donald Trump has repeatedly invoked the content of the emails on the stump as evidence that the Democratic nominee is not fit to serve. Assange has also been explicit in its belief that Clinton should not become president. The Clinton campaign has refused to confirm the authenticity of the emails. Despite Tuesday's development, Ecuador will continue to provide asylum for Assange, according to its statement. That piece of the puzzle. The next one we have here is off of Liberty Watchers, or try this, Liberty Riders News. It says, watch Trump turn to crowd last night and give signal that the revolution begins now. As Donald Trump has officially unveiled ethic reforms at a rally in Green Bay, Wisconsin on Monday. He did so while at the same time trashing the crooked Hillary Clinton. And it says, watch this to try this again. Watch him tear into Hillary Clinton, then 4 different protesters interrupt him. And there's a video, of course, that you can watch here of the whole thing. And it says, Donald Trump's 5-point plan for ethics reform. First, I'm going to reinstitute a 5-year ban on all executive branch officials lobbying the government for 5 years after they leave government service. I'm going to ask Congress to pass this ban into law so that it cannot be lifted by executive order. Second, I'm going to ask Congress to institute its own 5-year ban on lobbying by former members of Congress and their staffs. Expand the definition of lobbyist so we can close all the loopholes that former government officials use by labeling themselves consultants and advisors when we know they're lobbyists. Fourth, I'm going to issue a lifetime ban against senior executive branch officials lobbying on behalf of a foreign government. Fifth, I'm going to ask Congress to pass campaign finance reforms that prevent registered foreign lobbyists from raising money in foreign elections. Not only will we end our government's corruption, but we will end economic stagnation. The Trump detailed the ethics reform proposals that he would address if he became president. And I just read those to you, okay? It says it's time to clean out the swamp in Washington, D.C. Trump's 5-point plan will do that, and the mainstream media says that he has no platform. That's not true. They just don't report Trump's platform. Let's bring crooked politicians to heel, patriots. This is a revolution, and it's time to clean out the corruption from Washington, D.C. Every single patriot reading this needs to help us at Liberty Riders get the message out. I mean, that all sounds wonderful, and into practice is going to be another matter altogether. But I will say this, at least he has a plan. At least it sounds like he's heading the right direction. So, you know, we'll see how all this pans out. The next one we have here is off of conservativetribune.com. It says, Trump nukes Paul Ryan with hardcore truth just 1 day before the Wisconsin rally. Nominee Donald Trump and House Speaker Paul Ryan have been feuding with each other since even before Trump became the party's nominee. Where tensions between the two candidates seem to have lessened, but after the infamous Trump locker room talk tape was released on October 7th, Ryan made it clear that he would no longer campaign for Trump. He had barely done anything in the first place. Trump replied to this snub by going after Ryan on Twitter and at his rallies. On Sunday, Trump unleashed a blistering attack against Ryan on Twitter, taking him to task for perceived failures only a day before the Republican nominee is scheduled to attend a rally in Ryan's home state, the Hill reported. Trump criticized Ryan for always fighting the Republican nominee and compared him to the corrupt political machine that Democrats created to support their nominee, Hillary Clinton. Paul Ryan, a man who doesn't know how to win, including failed run 4 years ago, must start focusing on the budget, military vets, etc., Trump wrote in another tweet. And it says, despite the animosity between the two, Ryan has not pulled his endorsement of the GOP nominee. In Ryan's defense, the failure of the Romney-Ryan ticket wasn't as much Ryan's fault as it was Romney's. Rarely do vice presidential candidates have enough sway to tip the election one way or the other. Trump's final tweet attacked Ryan for not doing enough to go after Clinton over very damaging revelations from the WikiLeaks releases. Trump alluded specifically to the possibility of a crooked deal between Clinton team and FBI. If Trump ends up winning in December, we need to rebuild the bridges between them. Having the Republican Speaker of the House fighting the Republican President isn't good for anything. Both Trump and Ryan need to bury the hatchet right now and focus on stopping Clinton from getting in the White House. Ryan and Trump don't need to agree on everything, but they need to get along, or else Clinton will become the next president and fundamentally change everything about America. The next article that I have for you is off of westernjournalism.com. It says, New York Times lawyer drafts a blunt response to Trump's campaign libel allegations. After several women publicly accused Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump of sexual assault this week, He and his campaign fought back by dismissing the allegations and attempting to force the New York Times to retract an article advancing the narrative. The Times story provided 4 women with a forum to share their version of events, each of which included some type of uninvited physical contact by Trump. In response, the brash billionaire not only vehemently denied the allegations being made, but through his lawyers sent the vulnerable newspaper a cease and desist letter accusing it of defamation. It's apparent from, among other things, that the timing of the article, attorney Mark E. Kasowitz wrote, that it is nothing more than a political motivated effort to defeat Mr. Trump's candidacy. David McCraw, Vice President and Assistant General Counsel for the Times, responded to the legal demand with a letter of his own. Not only did the letter include an unequivocal refusal to retract or apologize for the article, McCraw went on to list several reasons he has concluded the piece fails to even cursorily meet the legal definition of libel. The essence of libel claim, of course, is the protection of one's reputation, he wrote. Mr. Trump has bragged about his non-consensual sexual touching of women. He has bragged about intruding on beauty pageant contestants in their dressing rooms. And there is a copy of this letter in here if you want to read that. The forceful rebuke of Trump's campaign missively reported earned McCraw the applause of staffers at the Times, which itself facing controversy this week after leaked emails suggested the paper served as an advocate for eventual Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton during her primary battle with Senator Bernie Sanders. McCraw went on to recount audio from a radio appearance in which Trump allowed his daughter to be described with a salacious term as further evidence the recent article inflicted no additional damage to Trump's reputation. Furthermore, the attorney insisted reporters diligently worked to confirm the women's accounts, noting it would have been a disservice not just to our readers, but to democracy itself to silence their voices. McCraw reaffirmed the paper's stance that it in no way defamed Trump with its article and invited the candidate to follow up with threats to take the grievance to court. If Trump believes that American citizens had no right to hear what these women had to say, and the law of this country forces us and those who would dare to criticize him to stand silent or to be punished, he concluded, we welcome the opportunity to have court set him straight. The next article that I have for you is off of westernjournalism.com. And this one says, hunt for more dirt on Trump comes up empty. Journalist Geraldo Rivera was gleeful on Sunday that he had the goods on Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump. However, a few days later, very deflated Rivera admitted he did not. On Sunday, Rivera announced that he could add fuel to the fire that erupted when a leaked 2005 video showed up talking about women in vulgar ways. I have interviewed Donald Trump many times and have been with him many times, and I have tapes, Rivera said on Fox News, the 5 on Sunday. My brother and I have been starting to go through the tapes now, and there are statements that, in the context of the current climate, would be embarrassing, he said. At the time, Rivera also noted, I never saw him come to any of the beautiful women come on to any of the beautiful women on the program. As Rivera went on searching for dirt, he ruefully announced his lack of success via Twitter. And it says, Rivera tweet, it says, the only relevant Trump tapes we've located so far is the one fairly obvious, one fairly vicious trade versus the Rosie Show during a 2016 interview at Trump Tower. He later corrected the erroneous 2016 in his tweet to 2006. However, he kept digging until he announced the search was over. He said the one tape he found was from Trump's feud with Rosie O'Donnell, which he called an old story. Rivera then added something very rare, an apology. Trump's feud with O'Donnell began when she denounced him for failing to take action against Tara Conner, who was the Miss USA in 2006 and was involved in an incident in which there were allegations of illegal drug use. The incident also involved Katie Blair, who was Miss Teen USA that year. Blair, in the wake of other contestants in Trump-owned pageants attacking the billionaire this week, fired back a defense of Trump in which she noted that even when others, such as O'Donnell, called for women to lose their crowns, Trump gave them a second chance. He stood behind us, she said. He still lifted us up. He encouraged us. As far as the rumors surrounding him coming into the backstage and things like that, dressing rooms, absolutely not. I never experienced that. I don't know anyone who has, she said. And the next one I have is off of the commonsenseshow.com. It says, Alaska, yourselves from Russian invasion. Hillary or Obama will soon be taking us to war. The war will start in Syria with accompanying conflict in space in order to knock out each other's surveillance and communication capabilities. However, the real danger to America is in Alaska. Obama and his friends have been weakening Alaska defenses since he came to power. The globalist takedown plan of America. America will be taken down according to the following scenario. 1, false flag, more than likely a scenario resulting in economic collapse and the destruction of the dollar. This is in line with what Dr. Walker Todd previously stated on the radio. Number 2, the implementation of martial law, perhaps involving the use of foreign troops. And 3, all-out conflict. Dr. Todd, not to be taken lightly, as he was economic consultant with 20 years of experience at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland. He is also a member of the Cato Institute's new Center for Monetary Financial Alternatives as one of its adjunct scholars. Given his background, he expressed opinions should be given very serious consideration. If Dr. Todd's prediction is accurate, this fits in with what other sources are saying is coming in the very near future. It has always been my position that a false flag even would be used as a pretext to invoke martial law. Martial law would then be used as the excuse to begin gun confiscation. Gun confiscation will be used to disarm American citizens prior to subjugating the country by using foreign mercenaries in what could be labeled as Red Dawn scenario. We could be approaching that time, as Paul Martin's sources are telling him that all of the agencies are preparing for a massive attack upon the Northeast as I write these words. Alaska, Russia's portal of entry into the United States. There are clear economic, political, and military reasons why the Russians would want to occupy Alaska. My interest in the topic surfaced quite serendipitously as a couple of listeners to my radio program sent me information on Agenda 21 invasion of small Alaska communities. And oh, by the way, they also reported that they were seeing Russian troops in their respective communities. The adjacent maps reveal the towns where Russian troops there is a large contingency of Russian civilians in Alaska. And there's a map here if you want to pull this up, take a look at it. The sighting of Russian troops in small Alaskan towns such as, now I'm going to try to pronounce this, Ketchikan, Alaska, got my undivided attention. Ketchikan is the southeasternmost city in Alaska with an estimated population of 8,050. Ketchikan is the 5th most populous city in the state. Another area where there's often civilian sightings of Russian troops is Skitka, Alaska. The city of Skitka, formerly New Archangel under Russian rule, is located on Baranov Island and the southern half of Chickagow Island in the Alexander archipelago of Pacific Ocean. Additionally, one military veteran reports seeing Russian submarines on a frequent basis just off the coast. Further, there are civilian reports of Russian vehicles and troops moving through Alaska north of Anchorage because of the municipality of the reports. These are indeed verifiable, reported accounts of Russian troops on American soil. Wasilla. There are additional reports of Russians around the Alaskan town of Wasilla. And then there's a letter. It says, Dear Dave Hodges, I'm a former Navy submarine operations officer. I formerly had family who lived in a sleepy Alaskan village of Wasilla. Formerly, there were repeated sightings in Wasilla and uniformed Russian soldiers up until about 2013. They are still there, but they do not come into town any longer, according to those I know. Wasilla is quite obviously a staging area for the invasion and occupation of Anchorage and Genoa. My former CO told me that we have suspended most of our submarine patrols of the Alaskan coastline. Sightings of Russian submarines by fishing vessels are now common. I have followed your website for 3 years. You used to write about how the coastline of western Alaska no longer has American planes patrolling, as was the case going back to the early days of the Cold War. Our feeling in the Navy was that Obama had turned Alaska into a defenseless area that will serve as a forward base of operations when World War III begins. You have been saying that you expect World War III to begin in Syria. I'm not so sure. I see a lot of evidence that tells me that it will start in Alaska. Simply put, Dave, we can no longer defend Alaska. We have been compromised from within and without. We are the verge of being invaded from Alaska all the way down to Canada, or all the way down into Canada, and eventually the Northwest. In preparation for seizing Alaska, the Russians have practiced posing as highway road crews. Local law enforcement have been told to ignore these crews. I have a friend who works in law enforcement capacity in the area. These fake road crews will allow them to disrupt communications and seize vital bridges and other assets in order to support an advancing force. You have written about Red Dawn. I believe Alaska is the launching point. When the shooting starts, Alaska will be seized by the Russians almost overnight. Keep writing, Dave, but know that most Americans do not give two shits about what is happening. Your role is to get people to think about preparation. We cannot win this war because we have been betrayed by our leaders. Signed, Jeff. Eastern Arctic, just outside of Alaska, says, I have learned from multiple sources that Russians have moved at least one and probably 2 divisions of troops into Eastern Arctic, just outside of Alaska. This dovetails with other Russian military political actions in recent times, as we know that the Russians have established a very large presence in the Arctic, just above Alaska. Russian troops are amassing just east of Alaska and to the north of the southern Arctic. I have also learned that Russians in large numbers have crossed over into Alaska. Many are in civilian clothes, and many are being housed in several closed Alaskan military bases and abandoned motels. I'm told that Russian troops are being maintained in the following 2 closed Alaskan bases. One is Adak Naval Air Station in Adak, and the type of base is MPL BRAC. The status, MPL status says final. Round 4 closure agency is the U.S. Navy. And the second one is U.S. Army Fort Greely in Fort Greely. It is the type base of BRAC. The MPL status is pending. The round is 4, and the closure agency is U.S. Army. It says further, it's not secret that some of these forces have worked with DHS on abduction exercises in which hypothetical members of independent media and uncooperative and influential politicians, such as just like the movie America, and that's spelled Amerika, are snatched by troops offloaded from low-flying helicopters in the middle of the night. These drills were part of Jade Helm. These drills have been coordinated in multiple locations, which leads one to believe that when the scenario is acted upon, these abductions will take place on the same night. More supporting documentation. I have repeatedly stressed the importance of 7 islands that Obama gave away to the Russians. Please note their location. 2 of these islands are ideal for launching an invasion of Alaska. The other 5 islands are serving to block access to American Navy in an interests of Russia. And there is a map of this in the article if you want to take a look at the map and see where these islands are. And then it says, multiple reports from Alaskan fishermen have observed that Russian troops are occupying U.S. Alaska's Wrangel Island in the Arctic, which was one of the 7 islands given to the Russians by Obama. This is clearly a staging area. Interestingly, Google posted the following pictures and labeled them as Russian military troops sighted in Alaska. And there are pictures here if you want to see pictures of the troops. It says maybe someone should be asking Google where they got these photos of what Google labels as Russian troops in Alaska. If one does not believe that Obama is capable of facilitating this kind of treason, perhaps Obama would care to explain what happened when in March of 2012, with a microphone left on, Obama made an unguarded comment to a Russian leader, Dmitry I don't know how to pronounce it, Medvedev, I guess it's pronounced, to be more lenient on nuclear issues because he could be more flexible. After the November election in 2012, does more flexible mean killing a Keystone pipeline prior to giving away 7 rich Alaskan islands to the Russians? Obama did indeed do that. Does more flexible mean letting Russians train in Colorado Springs and in Alaska? Obama did indeed do that too. Does being more flexible mean compromising our defenses of Alaska? This is absolutely the case as Alaska is being prepared to be conquered. Former Soviet Union defectors have warned the U.S. Antonelli Golitsyn, a high-ranking KGB defector who fled to the United States in order to warn Americans about the secret Russian plan to attack the United States. Golitsyn is generally considered to be among the first and most revealing on the subject of the secret Russian plans to attack, having authorized the Perestroika deception, in which Gibson wrote about the deceitful intent behind the Leninist strategy in which the present-day communists are actively pursuing as they fake American-style democratization efforts in Russia. According to Golitsyn, the short-term strategic objective of Russians is to achieve technologically convergent with West solely on Russian terms and mostly through a series of one-sided disarmament agreements. According to Golitsyn, after the United States military is eliminated as strategic threat to Russia, the strategic Russian plan is to pursue Lenin's goal of replacing national states with collectivist model of regional governments as a stepping stone to global governance. In order to achieve their final goal, Golitsyn states that Russia, after lulling America to sleep, will join with China in order to attack the United States from both the outside and inside. As he that the Soviets and the Chinese will be officially reconciled and enact a scissors strategy, attack the U.S. through the southern border and Russia through the northern border by way of Alaska. As the reader can clearly see, Obama is the catalyst in making these long-range communist plans come to fruition. Has Obama already signed America's surrender papers? Alaskans, you would be wise to prepare to defend yourselves. The sides have been drawn, and you have the misfortune of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The shooting will likely begin in Syria, but the real damage will be done in Alaska. There is one thing I neglected to mention. Nearly all of our combat troops are stationed outside of the country. In other words, we've turned off our security alarm, given away our handguns, left our doors unlocked, and the windows open. It's merely a matter of time until Big Bad Bear from the north comes down our collective chimneys and through our unlocked doors and windows. for today. Alaskans, prepare to defend yourselves. Next article that I have is off of Breitbart.com. 5 major foreign policy reveals from WikiLeaks Clinton email dump. Emails hacked from the account Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta continue to trickle into the public eye. Major revelations regarding Hillary Clinton's policy preferences on handling foreign policy, particularly rogue states, have come to the fore. Below, 5 of the biggest reveals from WikiLeaks email dumps so far. The first one reads, Clinton on Israel-Palestinian talks says a Poemkin process is better than nothing. As with almost every major Democratic figure, Clinton thinks the solution to the Palestinian problem involves manipulating and pressuring Israel. However, emails produced by WikiLeaks suggest Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin I always have a problem with his name, Netanyahu, I'm not sure I even pronounced it right then, feels Clinton is more instinctively sympathetic to Israel than the White House. And the worst moment in his relationship with her came when she was heavily scripted and reading from points prepared by the White House. That's funny because President Obama and his defenders have been loudly insisting they were the best friends Israel ever had. Clinton hearts Cuba. This is clearly, try it again. It is clear that Clinton will be useful to special interests that want to make money in Cuba and enrich the dictatorship in return. Clinton's team was also very happy to use Cuba as a political prop, in part because, as one special interest contact put it, it would drive Rubio, Cruz, and others nuts. The brutality and repression of Castro regime mean absolutely nothing to these people, and yet they portray themselves as morally superior proponents of human rights. To read anything from the WikiLeaks dump referring or referencing Cuba, you'd think the horrors of totalitarian communist repression were carried out by distinct ancestors of the Castros, and it's that anyone would still be hung up on it. The next one, the Project for Progressive Islam. The most interesting thing about this leaked email is that Clinton's inner circle and their connections in the Islamic world think progressive Islam is necessary because, on the record, Clinton claims Islam is already pretty darn progressive. Everything bad associated with Islam is supposedly the work of people who aren't true Muslims. The interesting conclusion to be reached from following these discussions is that global Islam is much more complicated and messy than the official pronouncements of Democrats would indicate. As long as Democrats are single-mindedly determined to pander to Muslim Americans convinced the anti-Muslim backlash is a graver threat than terrorism, and above all else, clubbing political opponents with accusations of anti-Muslim bigotry, they'll remain dangerous on both national security and the more subtle clash of civilians. Foreign government donors, all the money is in. Does anyone really doubt that all foreign money pouring into the Clinton Foundation is going to have profound impact on American foreign policy if Hillary gets into the White House? We'll be lucky if the new Clinton administration steering lucrative overseas contracts to foundation donors is the worst of it. And the last one says, Clinton said Iran could only be contained by bombing their nuclear facilities. Hillary Clinton's conversation with Goldman Sachs CEO Lloyd Blankfein in 2013 included her suggestion that Iran should be made to feel more pain by not in any way occupying or invading them, but by bombing their facilities. Bombardment is the Democrats' favorite foreign policy tool, along with supplying weapons to local fighters who will serve America's deniable, easily abandoned boots on the ground. Neither of those strategies works very well. Blankfein observed to his credit, and Clinton agreed with his assertion that bombing-only campaigns have never worked in the history of war. It's a muddled as or it's as muddled as everything else Hillary Clinton says on foreign policy, but it's arguably more aggressive stance than Obama's doctrine. The next article that I have for you is off of BizPac Review, and this one says FBI docs confirm Hillary treated security details so rudely that senior agents avoided working for her. Department of State security officers found then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton so unpleasant they refused to work for security detail, a former agent claims in newly released FBI document. The FBI Monday released 100 pages of documents relating to its investigation of Clinton's private email server. The documents incorporate summaries of several interviews the FBI conducted, including one with a woman who served as an agent with the State Department's Bureau of Diplomatic Security, DS, during Clinton's time as Secretary of State. During her interview, the agent said Clinton treated agents rudely and with contempt and was so unpleasant that senior agents typically avoided being on her security detail. And there's a quote here. First part of it's redacted. It says, explains that Clinton's treatment of DS agents on her protective detail was so contemptuous that many of them sought reassignment or employment elsewhere, the interview summary says. Prior to Clinton's tenure, being an agent on the security or the Secretary of State's protective detail was seen as an honor and privilege reserved for senior agents. However, by the end of Clinton's tenure, it was staffed largely with new agents because it was difficult to find senior agents willing to work for her. The agent added that she had spoken to several Secret Service agents who reported similar poor treatment from Clinton. The agent's claim about awful treatment from Clinton is backed up by some claims from ex-Secret Service agents. Author Ronald Kessler has written several books about Secret Service, and claims about Clinton treating agents nasty in private are numerous. Bill and Chelsea Clinton, on the other hand, are described positively. According to the agent, Clinton didn't just treat agents poorly. She reportedly disrespected U.S. ambassadors with her routine breaches of diplomatic protocol. From her own experience and information obtained through, and its redacted name, and other agents, redacted again, described a stark difference between Condoleezza Rice and Clinton with regards to obedience to security and diplomatic protocols. The summary says Rice observed strict adherence to State Department security and diplomatic protocols, while Clinton frequently and blatantly disregarded them. The agent said that it is standard diplomatic and security protocol for the Secretary of State to travel by armored limousine faster when visiting a foreign country. Clinton refused to do so, instead choosing to be accompanied in the limousine by her chief of staff, Huma Abedin. This frequently resulted in complaints by ambassadors who were insulted and embarrassed by this breach of protocol, the summary says. Clinton breaches of protocol, it adds, were well known throughout diplomatic security and were abundant. The next article that I have for you is off the Gateway Pundit. It says, elections expert. We now have 4 million uneligible and dead voters on American voter rolls. Elections expert J. Christian Adams told Fox and Friends on Tuesday morning that there are 4 million dead people on U.S. voter rolls. Adams, who was the voting section attorney at the U.S. Department of Justice, filed 6 suits in the past year against Philadelphia and Broward County, Florida, where the voter rolls are corrupted. Adams said he had one case in Texas where the person died in 1944. Continually sue to keep voter rolls the way they are. The Obama administration has no desire to clean up these voter rolls. Adams says dead people are voting, and it's something this administration does not want to do anything about. They must like it. They must like who they're voting for. Now we have 4 million, Steve, ineligible dead voters on American voter rolls, according to the Pew Charitable Trust. So there's that article. Wow. Next one we have here is off of mhannity.com. The undercover video, Democrats admit to inciting violence and anarchy at Trump rallies. An undercover investigation by Project Veritas is showing the dark underbelly of the Democratic campaign machine and the depths to which some organizations will sink to elect Hillary Clinton. According to James O'Keefe, the investigation has uncovered evidence of a dark money conspiracy, a violation of federal campaign coordination laws between Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, the Democratic National Committee, a variety of shady super PAC, and consulting firms. Project Veritas explains their investigation. Project Veritas Action has been released. The first video is in a multi-part series which exposes the dark secrets at the highest levels of DNC and Clinton presidential campaign. Using hidden cameras, undercover journalists reveal key players coordinating clandestine operations in support of Hillary Clinton's campaign. The video supported by emails recently released by WikiLeaks show that the dirty tricks, lines of communication, and the money trail lead all the way to the top. The video discloses numerous examples of behind-the-scenes shady practices with consequences most Americans have seen on national televisions at Donald Trump campaign rallies across the country. What the media hasn't reported is that the Clinton campaign and Democratic National Committee has been directing these activities with, at the very best, a very thin veil of plausible deniability. The series of videos is a culmination of a year-long investigation by the undercover journalists at Project Veritas Action. Included in the undercover video is evidence of dirty tricks, including what is known as bird dogging, or infiltrating Trump campaign events in order to incite anarchy and violence. The practice of bird dogging is best summed up in the exchange between a Project Veritas journalist and Scott Povell, the national field director for a nonprofit organization named Americans United for Change. Povell says, "So one of the things we do is we stage very authentic grassroots protests right in their faces at their own events. Like, we infiltrate, and then we get it on tape, and then when our guys get the beat up," and Project Veritas says, "You mean authentic seeming grassroots?" And Povell says, "No, authentic." And PV says, "You mean," and Povell says, "protesters." PV says, "So like progressive, what we saw in Madison." And Povell says, "We train up our people wherever they are to," and I work with a network of groups, "we train them up on how to get themselves into situation on tape, on camera, that we can use later." And PV says, "So some of this, so I probably know your work." And Povell says, "I know you do, everybody does, but," and PV says, "You mean like a situation where it's sort of like a," and Povell says, "You remember Iowa State Fair thing where Scott Walker grabbed the sign out of the dude's hand and then the dude gets kind of roughed up right in front of the stage right there on camera?" And PB says, "Yeah." And Povell says, "That was all us. The guy that got roughed up is my counterpart who works for Bob Creamer." And PB says, "And that was like storyboarded? Get him roughed up like that?" And Povell says, "We scenarioed it." And PB says, "And so you like lent yourselves to that situation and it happened, a self-fulfilling prophecy." And Povell says, "We not only lent ourselves, we planted multiple people in that front area around him, so in the back, to make sure there wasn't just an action that happened up front. There was also reaction that happened out back. So cameras, when they saw it, saw double angles of stuff, like they saw what happened up front and they saw the reaction of people out back." And PB says, "That's even brilliant. That's brilliant." And Povell says, "And then the reporters had people to talk to." In addition, Povell admits to paying mentally ill and homeless people to do some crazy stuff at rallies. The term bird dogging is actually used in recent release emails from WikiLeaks by the Clinton campaign itself. Project Veritas promises that this is only the first of several part series in this dark money conspiracy. And there is video in this if you want to see the actual video. The next one we have here is off the All News Pipeline. It says, "DNC Insider, we have mentally ill people. We pay to do shit at Trump events. Bombshell report goes viral exposing Hillary's campaign." Project Veritas has released part 1 of the year-long investigation by their undercover journalist, which exposes the dark secrets of the highest levels of DNC and Hillary Clinton's campaign that not only confirms the recent WikiLeaks hacks, but exposes practices that are criminal in nature. Part 1, showing DNC operatives and insiders on hidden cameras, was released on October 17, 2016, and is so explosive that in less than 24 hours it has garnered over 2.3 million hits, where we see the inner workings of DNC and the Clinton campaign in collusion with super PACs, which is illegal, to deliberately incite violence at GOP presidential nominee Donald Trump events in a practice they call bird dogging. When discussing what sorts of dirty tricks Fogel, Creamer, and others managed at the bequest of DNC and Clinton campaigns, a Project Veritas action investigator asked Fogel if he would recognize Fogel's work. He says, "Oh, I know you do. Everybody does." And, it goes on stuff that I already read in the last article. And then it says, Fogel also references Shirley Teeter, a 69-year-old lady who claims that she was assaulted at a Trump rally in North Carolina. And he says she was one of our activists. He says, while introducing the term bird dogging in the political lexicon. Scott Fogel, who is National Field Director for a nonprofit organization named America's United for Change, admits to the undercover journalists that they contract directly with DNC and the Clinton campaign both. Fogel is also the one that states, "I'm saying we have mentally ill people that we pay to do shit. Make no mistake, over the last 20 years, I paid off a few homeless guys to do some crazy stuff, and I've also taken them for dinner, and I've also made sure they had a hotel and a shower and put them in a program. Like, I've done that." But the reality is, a lot of people, especially our union guys, they'll do whatever you want. They're rock and roll. When I need to get something done in Arkansas, the first guy I call is the head of the AFL-CIO down there, because he will say, "What do you need?" And I'll say, "I need a guy who will do this, this, and this." And they will find that guy, and that guy will be like, "Hell yeah, let's do it." That's just the tip of the iceberg and what is shown in the video below. And so you can watch that video. And the article goes on for a little ways here, but I think it's pretty much what I've already read to you. So we'll move on to the next one. The next one is called whatsupwiththat.com. Leaked Clinton campaign memo on climate change shows it's really about politics, not science. And this says, in a memo called Climate, a Unifying Theory to the Case, email from John Podesta to Chris Lehane on the 28th of January of 2014. This memo was emailed to Podesta, a senior White House official, from Lehane, partner in the strategic communications firm Fabene and Lehane, dissolved in November of 2015. We have it courtesy of WikiLeaks and whoever leaked it to them. John Podesta was chief of staff to Bill Clinton and counselor to President Obama. He is chairman of Hillary Clinton's campaign. And Chris Lehane, when an attorney in the White House counsel office, he and his current business partner, Mark Fabani, called themselves the Masters of Disaster for their work as a rapid response team responding to the many scandals of the Clinton administration. Lehane co-authored a book on damage control titled Masters of Disaster, The 10 Commandments of Damage Control. Jim Jordan, Kerry's former campaign manager, called him a master of the political hand-to-hand for his work as a political strategist. And the quote is, "Thank you for asking us to share some ideas for a holistic approach to climate. Per your direction, the goal is to unify policy, politics, and communication to help the administration best execute an informed plan over a multi-year time period. This document is intended to provide some food for thought as the administration refines its thinking on climate. It addresses the 4 components that the administration may want to consider as it seeks to lead on this issue. Number 1, 3-year framework. Number 2, right versus wrong make the case that climate must be approached as a challenge of historical social change where progress will depend in part on successfully casting the issue in moral terms of who is right and who is wrong. Number 3, the big idea. It could drive an administration-wide approach to climate for the next 3 years. Number 4, 2014 action plan. To achieve victory, we must treat climate change as an issue of historic importance that is worthy of a true political social movement to create change. This political social movement must be founded on moral principles with stark definitions of who is right and who is wrong. And it is important to outline the historically negative, irreversible implications if we were not to succeed. By pursuing this as a political social movement, President Obama and his administration will best be able to assure that his legacy includes his unprecedented leadership on climate that initiated the shifting of the country's political tectonic plates to enable transformative climate change policy before it was too late. At the end of the day, given the powerful and entrenched interests that are opposed to climate change policy, one needs to have an organizing platform that defines the administration as being morally on the right side of the issue, and equally important, defines the opposition as morally responsible for an issue that threatens the health and welfare of the American people. Define the issue as between those who believe in the science and therefore are taking steps to respond to the scientific findings versus those who do not believe in the science. The power of this approach is that it puts the opposition in an indefensible box. The vast majority of people believe the science that climate is changing. If it fits into what we call the Trollogite narrative, anti-women, anti-Latino, anti-gun safety, anti-common sense, fiscal policy, anti-science, that is raising basic trust issues for the Republican Party, especially with electorally decisive voter cohorts. You either believe in the basic science or you are against basic science, in which case you failed a basic requirement for being capable of occupying public office. So will need to be animated by 3 principles that the wedge political policies would connect with. Think FDR's 4 freedoms of, or TR's 3 C's, in the context of being informed by various campaigns, candidate and ballot initiative, in which climate was deployed as decisively winning political issue. There are 3 issues that really stand out as wedge principles that could undergird the big idea, whatever the big idea may be. Health, safety. The opposition is engaged in practices or holding positions that are demonstrably imperiling the health and safety of our people. This ranges from macro issues like extreme weather to local issues like drinking water, air quality, and rail safety, to micro issues like children's asthma. People care when the health and safety of their families are implicated. Pocketbook. People care when climate impacts them economically. On the positive aspirational front, this principle can be about whether new green jobs will be based here or overseas, or how citizens are able to save money by paying less for energy. Accountability, responsibility. Follow the money. Who's accountable and responsible for bad things that are happening, and how are they rigging the system to benefit from the bad things? 2014 action plan. Establishment of an extreme weather SWAT team prepared to work together and engage when extreme weather happens, including response, local outreach, media, science information about historic nature of the event, and coordinating possible principles, travel, POTUS, FLOTUS, VOPTUS, and cabinet. And that's the end of the excerpt. And it says, in conclusion, the most important thing about this memo, obvious almost 3 years later, is its complete failure. The environment, our most serious problem. It's a minor issue on presidential elections, seldom even mentioned. Climate change isn't among our top 10 fears. The approach is pure politics with Little mention of science. For example, the SWAT teams, as we have seen, blame all extreme weather on climate change, ignoring that extreme weather is normal, occurring before any anthrop- um, anthropogenic effects. The IPCC has repeatedly explained this, not just in their regular assessment reports, but also in the 2012 report, Managing the Risks of Extreme Events and Disasters to Advance Climate Change Adaptation. Worse, the binary framing. The vast majority of people believe the science that climate is changing, ignores the key issues of how much change is likely from anthropogenic sources and when. That is the area of debate among climate scientists. There is yet no consensus and the necessary input to make public policy decisions. Describing climate change as moral issue probably seemed like a sure winner to Lehane, especially with academia, journalists, and most NGOs as supporting players, but that prevented political compromise or any rational discussion of cost versus benefits, both essential elements of successful public policy. And it polarized the issue so that America has taken few measures to even prepare for the repeat of past weather, as Hurricane Matthew reminded us. Worse, Lehane does not mention what he relies upon as the authorities for science, the IPCC, NOAA, alarmists that journalists love for exciting sound bites, the climate scientists who write the IPCC's Working Group 1 reports to explaining their stage of knowledge and the largest uncertainties in much of it. There is a large gap between the certainty of warming since the early 19th century, plus a large role of anthropogenic forces since 1950, and the massive unknown driving climate during the 21st century. All that is lost when the issue is defined in purely moral terms. So they lost. Clinton's probable win in March 1 predicted a landslide. Lehane and his fellow activists a second chance. Will they learn from their failures in 28 years since James Hansen's 1988 testimony to Congress ignited the movement? Or will they have sufficient political power to push through their agenda despite their weak political support and ineffective plans? There are better ways to handle major public policy issues, climate change, our mad foreign wars, and our mishandling of so many other key challenges. These show our dysfunctional politics in action. We can do better. And the next article I have for you, this is off of independentsentinel.com. Clinton Foundation operated illegally. Chelsea appears to have embezzled. Chelsea Clinton actually arranged for an independent governance review of the Clinton Foundation and had it conducted by a prominent law firm, New York law firm of Simpson Thacher, a firm that specializes in philanthropic issues. The results were devastating. They concluded in December of 2010 that the Clinton Foundation had a weak rubber stamp board of directors, and many of its donors had an expectation of quid pro quo benefits in return for gifts. This came out in a WikiLeaks email Thursday. There had been none of the independent oversight of the foundation required under federal charity laws. Many inside the foundation opposed the intervention. Doug Band was one of them. It was Chelsea who had misgivings and demanded the review. It was led by Victoria Simpson, an esteemed legal expert. Weaknesses included a board consisting of insiders and the use of audits based on cash accounting instead of on the federally mandated accrual basis. The donors exposed a quid pro quo for their contribution, and they expected them from the U.S. government. There are many prominent foreign donors, and many were Middle Eastern sheiks, and others were Eastern European tycoons, African mining magnates, and U.S. billionaires. As Ortel, Wall Street analyst, has been saying for months, it was an illegal rogue charity, and the people involved can't claim ignorance. In a normal election without the distractions of attacks on Donald Trump's personal habits, this would be major news. Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe was the director of the foundation at the time. McAuliffe gave the Clintons a $1.35 million gift that allowed them to buy their 11-room Chappaqua, New York mansion in 1999. The board failed to meet their fiduciary responsibilities and took no real role in determining the foundation's strategic policies or in evaluating the effectiveness of the organization's global programs for the poor. They only convened once a year, which was found to be inadequate. The foundation's outside auditors noted as a material weakness the lack of board meetings and that the board minutes are not signed. The weakness was not corrected even after being noted by the auditors. In addition, minutes appeared to have been cloned from one year to the next, the review stated. None of the board members had financial know-how to even participate in audits. Conflicts were not disclosed in a timely manner, and the board members failed to follow the policy when they became aware of the conflicts. This appears to be a case of study in charity fraud, Ortel told Daily Caller, and nonetheless, afterwards, the records show no changes were made. This charity even went around the world raising even more money. The law firm's findings were delivered to Clinton Foundation chief Bruce Lindsay and to John Podesta, Hillary's campaign chairman. Hillary undoubtedly knew about it while she was Secretary of State. Chelsea Clinton used multiple aliases while fundraising, and she used those names while writing to Podesta and collecting millions, including from Tom Steyer, the leftist billionaire. Why? New release by WikiLeaks indicates that Chelsea Clinton may have stolen large sums of money from the Clinton Foundation. An email from the foundation's chief operating officer, Laura Graham, to Podesta and another top staffer indicate funds may have been misappropriated. The email indicates that Chelsea Clinton may have been using funds from a nonprofit foundation to cover the expenses of her for-profit ventures. And here is a highlighted article. It says, Matt McKenza has requested via Barry and HR an increase of $1,500 monthly in his foundation consultant work to cover what he claims and Barry claims is work he is doing on behalf of CBC as it relates to her role with CF. The new breakdown of his total compensation would be as follows if we approve this. It says $4,000 foundation, $2,500 non-CBC plus $1,500 CBC, $2,500 for CESC, $1,500 CBC office for profit work. It says I have no idea how they achieved what is 50-50 split on his CBC work between her for-profit and CF activities. I think it's more heavily weighted toward her for-profit and would think it would be closer to a 75-25 split. I have pushed back on Matt via HR several times, asking for written justification and job responsibilities. He is giving me nothing but generic statements, and then it trails off. And that's the end of what's highlighted here. It says, would it surprise anyone to find out she's an embezzler? She received over $600,000 a year for basically no-show job, like parents like daughter. So there you have that one. Wow. Okay, the next one we have here is off of KimATV.com. And it says, Oregon hospital ER quarantined after people start hallucinating. I thought this was really an interesting article, kind of a mystery going on here. So let's see if we can get this to scroll down so I can read it. Okay, here we go. It's off of Coos Bay, Oregon. It says a hospital in Coos Bay quarantined its emergency room after 78-year-old patient, her caregiver, 2 sheriff's deputies, and a hospital employee all began having hallucinations. KDAL-TV News reported Wednesday that authorities have not yet pinpointed what caused the mysterious episodes, but they believe it was something spread by direct contact. The bizarre incident began around 3 a.m. Wednesday when the elderly woman's caregiver, a 50-year-old woman, called authorities to say people were vandalizing her car. And I got to get to scroll up here a little bit. And it's giving me a fit. Come on, hamster. Okay, let's see here. Bounced around, so I got to find my spot again. Goodness gracious. Okay. It says a deputy responded to the home on East Bay Road in North Bend, but found nothing. The caregiver called back at 5:30 a.m. and was then taken to Bay Area Hospital after deputies suspected the woman might be having medical issues causing hallucinations. Medical personnel checked her. She appeared fine and returned home. Then the two deputies who worked with the caregiver began having hallucinations and had to be hospitalized. After that, 78-year-old woman and the hospital employee started showing similar symptoms and had to be hospitalized as well. The Coos County Hazmat team responded to Bay Area Hospital and the residents on East Bay Road. The team cleared the emergency room and began decontaminating vehicles and equipment. Everyone involved was quarantined while an investigation was conducted to determine the cause of the hallucinations, but nothing was found in the emergency room or the home on East Bay Road. Blood samples revealed nothing unusual. No source of contamination has been identified or found, Sergeant Pat Downing of the Coos County Sheriff's Office said in a press release. Although authorities have not yet pinpointed what caused the episode, they believe it was something spread by direct contact. The Sheriff's Department says one possibility is a medicated patch. The emergency room quarantine was lifted after it was cleared and found to be safe. Both deputies were treated and released from the hospital. The caregiver and the 78-year-old female client are still under care at the hospital. The investigation continues. So I found that a little bit odd. And then the last thing that I have for you, of course, is the feel good. It's something to kind of lift our spirits a little bit after watching all this negative news. And it is a screen share of a little video that I have for you, and it's only a minute and a half long. I think you'll enjoy this. So we'll play this, get it up here where you can see it.
A teen used the opportunity of a lifetime to help others who are less fortunate than she is.
For the nurses, the first praise God and go number.
Emma Allred of Idaho has been fighting a rare form of ovarian cancer since she was 10. Now 13, she was granted a special request by the Make-A-Wish Foundation. She could meet anyone, go anywhere, or live out a childhood dream.
I tried to get her to go to Disney World again because our first family trip there, it was the month that we found out that she had cancer when we came back. So she didn't really have a good time. So I was trying to encourage her to try to do that. Maybe she'd have a much better time.
But she didn't want to go to Disney World or meet a celebrity. She wanted to feed the homeless and asked the foundation to organize a food drive in her name. Hundreds of people from her community turned out, along with some corporations, to create one epic food drive. 13,000 pounds of food were donated. Emma and her family are overwhelmed and grateful for the support. But many people who turned out for Emma's Wish Day were more impressed by her giving spirit.
Her first reaction was to think of others, and it was very humbling. And made me very proud.
For InsideEdition.com, I'm Mara Montalbano.
So there you have that little video. I thought you'd enjoy that. It goes to show, you know, what one person can do. She had an unusual circumstance and had a lot of eyes upon her. Of her wanting to do something selfish, she did something for a lot of people. 13,000 pounds of food will feed a lot of people. Kind of stymies the imagination, don't it? And if a child like that can do something of that magnitude, surely to goodness you can find it within your heart to go to your cupboard and pull out a couple cans of food and donate them to the food drives in your area. Holidays are coming up. I mean, people are hungry year round, but the holidays are coming up, and it would be nice for people not to be turned away from these food drive places when they have families to feed. So Go to your cupboard, pull out a couple cans of food, find out where your local donation center is, and take them a few things. Non-perishables, of course, but that would be your good deed for the day. And with that, we hope that it's a beautiful day where you are. Hope you can go out and stick your feet in the grass and ground yourself, soak up a little earth energy, take a breath of fresh air, and be glad you woke up above ground. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.